Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 162 of Secret Sauce, the Restaurant Marketing Podcast, Restaurant Trends for 2022, Part 2.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success. Your secret sauce.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. In the first episode of this two-parter, we looked at the big trends that are affecting the restaurant industry, other industries around the restaurant industry, and our customers. We also started looking at some of the trends as we see them based on the big trends that are occurring, as well as what we're picking up from restaurants around the world. We talked about the culture within the restaurant and how labor is going to be a significant differentiator between successful and unsuccessful restaurants. Now we're going to lead into mission-focused restaurants, something that I think we're going to see a lot more of this year. Restaurants where the mission is a fundamental part of what it is that they do. Now, when I speak to most, in fact, almost all restaurant owners, they're cooking some sort of cuisine, potentially because it's their cultural background, or they bought something because they thought it would be a good idea. There's very few of them out there, and they tend to be quite successful. People who are doing something because it aligns with their values, their vision, and they have a mission for the restaurant. Now, that can be quite useful. And traditionally, the way that I've always talked to restaurant owners about a mission-based restaurant is the fact that it gives you something really clear that you can then use to market to your customers. You know, this is what we do. And a really good example of that would be a vegetarian restaurant. I walked by one last weekend and it said, "Animals are our friends and we shouldn't eat our friends." Something that for anyone who is vegetarian, that will resonate with them and they will be much more likely to go in there because they know that they're kind of like in friendly territory, that there's someone who understands the way that they're thinking. There's a shared mission, shared values, shared vision. That can be really powerful from a marketing point of view, and that's why I'm a big fan of mission-based restaurants. Critical that it aligns with the mission of the owner, because if it doesn't, then you get a certain amount of inconsistency. If the owner is, if he loves a steak sandwich, I would be very poor at running a vegetarian restaurant because I do like steak. Now, I like vegetarian meals, but I also do like steaks from time to time. I don't think it would be authentic for me to run a vegetarian restaurant. But when we talk about labor management, if you run a vegetarian restaurant and you get people who are also vegetarians who are going to work in your restaurant, then that gets really powerful because you could have a mission like giving all people the ability to enjoy great tasting vegetarian meals so that people don't feel that if they, could have gone to a steak restaurant, but they went to a vegetarian restaurant, you want them to feel like they didn't get second best. So you're going to put a lot of effort in coming up with really, really tasty vegetarian food. Now, people can do that from an animal welfare point of view. They can do it from a health point of view. They can do it from a holistic approach point of view. There's plenty of reasons why you would think about vegetarian or vegan type restaurants. The key thing here, though, is that if you've got someone who truly believes in that mission that you've got, they are much more likely to stay with your restaurant than move, because it would be quite inauthentic of them to leave your vegan restaurant where you're producing amazing dishes and the customers think, wow, this is really tasty. I never knew that vegan food could be so tasty. This is amazing. They're very unlikely to go and work at McDonald's or the steak restaurant up the road because you have that alignment there. And that can be a really powerful tool in your team. And it also then creates this beautiful little triad of things where you've got the people, you've got the mission, and you've got the customers. There's some good profitability to have in there. You can build a sustainable restaurant quite easily where you've got that all in harmony. And think about it. the less churn you've got in your staff, then the less your training costs are, and the better they're going to be at their job because they've got 1, 2, 5, 10 years worth of experience in working in your restaurant. They know your systems back to front. They probably wrote some of them. So that can be a really powerful tool. And I think that we're going to see more of these because this is potentially something that customers are looking for as well. We are going to talk about customers and what it is that they're going to be wanting. And I think there's a nice little sweet spot here for smart restaurant operators to do a little bit of rebranding, a little bit of rethinking about the culture and the values, vision, and mission of the restaurant. That can be really powerful. You can create some good traction there. Now, the last labor component thing that we want to talk about is the prices in your restaurant are going to go up. So we're going to talk about some of the other inflationary pressures that we're seeing from the macroeconomic aspect. You need to be really on top of your wages costs, and they are probably going to be going up. So if you're going to pay higher wages, and you may or may not have been running a profitable restaurant before all of this started, but if wages are going up, you've got to punch those prices up. And you know what? A lot of people are kind of expecting it. We're seeing inflation breaking out all over the place. And so a night out on a Saturday night, a lunch on a Wednesday, or a nice brekkie on a Sunday morning, all of those things, we're expecting them all to go up. Be conscious of what the impact is going to be on your customers, but don't be afraid. I know, we find it in our business as well. It's really tough. You think, oh my God, if I put our prices up 2%, all of my customers are going to leave. You know what? That never happens. In our IT business, when we put our prices up, we're about to put our prices up there. The interesting thing is when a customer does leave, they're usually the really, really crappy ones. They're ones who don't appreciate our service. They don't appreciate the work that we put in, and they're the ones who always question the bill. You put the price up, they go, and it's like, oh, cool, that customer just left. That's great, because you've got to be thinking about firing some of your customers. So I don't think that many people are going to, when you put your prices up 10%, the impact it will have on customers overall is a lot bigger in the mind of the restaurant owner than it is in the customer. And you need to think about that. Critically, the impact that it's going to have on your bottom line, massive. Now, you might give your staff an 8% wage rise and just keep 2% for yourself. That's still going to be a good result, particularly if you're able to retain your staff, because the name of the game next year is going to be hiring and retaining great staff. So all of the things that you can do to make that easier, they're going to be critical. And we're going to see a lot more restaurants really focusing on that, because just hearing about the crisis in labor in 2021, and there's nothing saying that's going to get better next year. So have a think about that. Have a think about what you're going to do to keep your team together and to build your team to make sure that all of those numbers, go through your business plan, crack out Excel, have a look at how those things are going to top out, because it's interesting. I've spoken to restaurant owners who've started giving wage increases and they haven't done anything about prices. And it's like, were you making money before? No, we were barely scraping by. And it's like, well, how do you think that's going to go now? It's like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. You need to think about that. Now, the next area we want to look at is delivery. So a key part. Now, it was a big part of some restaurants. 2 years ago, it became a much bigger part for a lot of restaurants around the world, as delivery was the only way, delivery or takeout was the only way that you could get food into the mouths of customers, because dine-in was banned in so many places for so long. So delivery, it's going to be a thing. We've trained a lot of people now to expect the convenience, and it is a vastly different product having some food delivered to your house or picking it up and eating it at home with the family with a bottle of wine that you've got. You don't have to worry about getting an Uber home. You don't have to worry about a babysitter, and you can sit and watch the TV show that you want. So it's a vastly different product, and important to be thinking about those two products and how you're going to manage those. So it's interesting though, because we're starting to see a lot more people complaining about delivery times, and that is because, interesting, what were we just talking about? Labor shortages. For many of the delivery companies, they were the employer of last resort, and they often had migrants. They often had people who weren't able to keep down a steady job for a variety of reasons. They also had people who were looking for flexible working arrangements. But I think the key thing to remember here is that there is a subset of people who work for companies like Menulog and Deliveroo that view it as the employer of last resort. Hard to make money, but getting harder to make money. Now, what did we just say? That the labour market was ridiculously tight? Interesting. That means that now there are a lot more jobs out there, more jobs than there are people. So those people who were riding a bike through the cold and wet and rainy streets of London or New York, they're now working in a restaurant. They're probably earning more money. They've got more job security. They're earning probably significantly more money. And so they're struggling to get riders, which I think is really quite interesting. Decreasing numbers of students, new migrants, and that's decreased the pool of people who would potentially do that sort of work. Just recently, McDonald's announced that they had done a deal with Uber to renegotiate the terms of delivery that were provided to their franchisees in an effort to increase franchisee profitability. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I am not sure why companies like McDonald's aren't looking at bringing that in-house, because I think the solution is actually really quite expensive. There's probably some reasons like outsourcing, the risk of delivery, car accidents, fatalities, things like that. So they're probably prepared to pay a premium, but they have the market power to really drive down those costs. And this is going to put profitability under an even greater pressure for delivery aggregators. And not only that, we've seen European laws change. Over the last 2 years, there has been a decrease in the amount of effort to answer the question about whether they're independent contractors or employees with all of the rights an employee would normally get. And I think that this is really important because at the end of the day, you've got to be remembering that, in my opinion, the only real innovation that they've got is the ability to pay independent wages. As an employee, you need to pay people a minimum number of hours, you need to pay them a minimum wage, and you need to give them other benefits like sick leave potentially, or increased pay to make up for that lack of sick leave. As an independent contractor, effectively what Uber and Deliveroo and the others say is, well, you know what, you made a decision to come out and deliver some food today. The fact that it didn't work out too well, that's just life in the big city as a small business owner. Tough luck, better luck tomorrow night. Now, that doesn't really cut it as if they're an employee, and I think we're going to see more of this European type legislation roll out where they're going to say, you know what, they are actually employees and you need to be treating them properly. You need to be thinking about the workplace health and safety aspects of their job. You need to be thinking about the long-term benefits, and you need to be paying them an award wage. What's that going to do? I think it's going to do two things. Firstly, it's going to significantly impact the profitability of those businesses. Some of those aggregators will go out of business, I think, particularly looking in Australia, where Deliveroo is coming fourth in probably a two-horse race. So you'll see some of them shutting down, or either that or selling off parts of their business in countries to other aggregators. But it may bring the whole model into doubt. I think the jury's still out on that. If they are treated as employees, it's going to make it really quite expensive. And I think the opportunity, once again, and this is what we're seeing with a lot of local pizza restaurants, they are running order direct and save campaigns, and they're using delivery aggregators to find new customers and then slipping into the bag an offer, order direct and save, because they're not paying these huge margins. So we'll see a lot more consolidation, probably a tighter market. What we will see though, and this is a definite, is increased prices. And that is because they're going to need to pay more for their riders because it's a tight labour market, and without any riders, remember, they're in a three-sided market: riders, restaurants, and customers. And you need all three, and you need them in just the right mix. And that's why it's so difficult. That's why they prefer the independent contractor, because if they get the number of riders wrong, then it's easy. They can just pay a little bit of a premium to get a few more of them to get off the couch and come out and ride for a couple of hours. And if there's not a lot of demand, then that's fine, because it's a contingent workforce. They're not going to get paid if there's no deliveries. That eases the burden of getting that triad correct. But they will need to start paying more. And If they are classed as employees, they're going to probably have to pay significantly more. Those costs are going to flow through in increased commissions, I think. And that's going to hurt because for restaurants, think about it, this is the year that we need to be putting some profitability into the bank to repay all of the horror of the last 2 years. So going to be interesting to see how that pans out. But I think we'll see a lot of big movement in the next 12 months. From a legislative point of view and from a consolidation / leaving markets point of view for the delivery aggregators. So what does that mean for your restaurant? Well, normally we would say it's a big opportunity to bring delivery in-house, cut out those hideous margins and increase the profitability of your restaurant. Particularly, I think it works well when that role is job shared. So if someone who can work front of house, back of house, and deliver a few pizzas, deliver a few burgers, deliver some fish and chips, whatever it is that you're delivering, I think you've got a good recipe there for profitability. Or pick up only. And I think pick up only is potentially where a lot of people need to be thinking about because it's a subset of people, but that subset can be quite large. And we see that with some of our customers using Restolo that are just doing pickup. If the food's good, people will go out of their way. Literally, people will go out of their way to come out to your restaurant and pick it up because it's not completely convenient, but it's not far off very convenient. However, the opportunity probably isn't there just because the fact that the labour market is so tight. The key thing is to make sure that you're managing your costs. And I think using the aggregators for introductions into new customers, that can work. Then you have in the bag that goes out, potentially there's a flyer that says, order takeout. This is our takeout menu. Look at the difference in pricing. And if they are able to save 30%, I think you'll find a lot of people, because remember, people are price conscious. And that convenience, what is the value of that convenience? If someone's ordering $100 worth of food and it's going to be $30 cheaper to pick it up, a lot of people will come and pick it up. And that price difference, there isn't anyone else who's going to be, it's not like they can go and get food delivered from someone else that's going to be of comparable quality and amount for $30 cheaper, because they're all using a delivery aggregator. So drive people to pick up. And that is the way that you're going to be able to drive profitability. I would normally say, make sure that you're doing the numbers. You've probably already done that, because I know last year we saw a huge number of restaurants who said, oh, we're never doing delivery. Then there was COVID and it's like, oh, we got to do delivery. We've got to jump on Uber Eats. And then they were dead within 6 weeks because they were just shipping out so much food. Thousands, tens of thousands of dollars worth of orders. They were shipping them out all at 10, 20% losses. And yeah, they were believing what the aggregators were saying. Hey, you've got no front of house staff. So, that's how you can manage the commission. Because of course they want to keep the price down, because the lower the prices are in their system, the more people are going to order from them more frequently. And that's what their game is all about. So keep an eye on the numbers. See if there is an opportunity to drive some customers to pick up. It's the cheapest way that you're going to be able to get the food out the door, particularly if we do go back into lockdown, but hopefully that's not going to occur. The next big trend that we're going to see is around sourcing. And we've seen this with lobsters last year at Christmas time, and fingers crossed. And I think early indications are we're going to get cheap lobsters in Australia again this year, which is epic. And that's because China doesn't want our lobsters anymore. And that's okay, because there's always a place at my table for a lobster. Lots of businesses out there, Penfolds Wines, they've had their exports cut dramatically. But this cuts both ways. And it also, talking to some restaurants, they're seeing two things. One, an inability to source some key ingredients for some of their signature dishes. And two, price increases. And these price increases are driven by all of the things that we were talking about in the last episode. So there's no one, because of the labour shortages, there's no one to pick the fruit off the trees. That means that the supply of fruit has decreased. That means that obviously now we've got more dollars chasing less fruit, the price goes up. So what does this mean? Well, obviously, let's go back to the other trend that we were talking about. Prices are going to go up. So we've talked about labour is going to go up. That's fine. Food prices are going to go up. Now, labour and food, we're talking about the big two in the costs of running your restaurant. They're the big two. So apart from the costs going up and obviously being reflected in increased prices, be bold with those price rises, because you're going to need to. There's a couple of things that I think are going to be big trends that we're going to see. We're going to see more restaurants focused on the local sourcing opportunities that they have. We've talked about this from a marketing point of view in the past. You know, if you've got Farmer Bob and he's got these great cattle and there's a local abattoir that look after the meat in a special way, you can tell that story, and that's why your steak is the best steak in town. And on top of that, people like to support local businesses. We're seeing more and more restaurants that say, you know, on the back of their menu, these are the 10 businesses that we source our produce from. And when someone knows one of those businesses, then they're likely to come in there because it builds that affinity. And I think people get that feel-good factor from it. And remember, we're going back to that sort of that mission kind of basis for your restaurant. Support the local community, support your local restaurant because we support local businesses. And here's 10 local businesses that we do. And on top of that, you can say, you know, this is the way that he grows a potato. Now, there's probably not that many ways of growing a potato, but you could come up with a whole potato story because let's face it, everyone loves potatoes. This is Bob. These are his potatoes. We talked about that from a marketing point of view, and I was quite passionate about it because you see the effect that it can have. But I think now we're doing it just because I need to get some potatoes, and if the trucks aren't around, then obviously getting it from closer is a lot better than having it shipped interstate or, God forbid, any produce that's being shipped across country borders. It's going to be a lot easier to get something from just up the road than it is from thousands of kilometers away, and it's probably going to end up being significantly cheaper. So we're looking at this not from a marketing point of view, but just from a sheer, we want to create stability in the menu. We don't want to have to say, no, there's no mashed potato today because we ran out of potatoes. Now, we're probably not going to run out of potatoes, but we're seeing it in some of the niche products that people put into their signature dishes. So we want to be thinking about that, securing supply. And think about it, if there's a market gardener, probably no one ever talks about his produce. If you're out there in the market talking about their produce, there's probably no one else talking about their produce. So you're probably going to be able to secure a little bit better access to their produce because they like supplying to restaurants because it means that their produce is really high end. The other thing that restaurant owners are starting to talk about is growing their own. So if they've got a plot of land, even if they've got something at the restaurant, particularly the herbs, some of those herbs can be quite niche. Some of them can be a little bit hard to get. This is a really good way of assisting with your supply as well as decreasing the costs into the restaurant. And so that kills two birds with one stone. It was the high-end, fine dining kind of restaurant. Oh, yes, and come out, you know, we've got an acre out in the hills where we grow this, that, and the other thing. I think more people are going to be looking at ways that they can be a little bit more inventive, ingenious, entrepreneurial about the way that they source and potentially grow their own gear. Now, the next trend, we're going to be looking at our customers. What is it that customers want? So the bifurcation of the market, there's people out there with money to spend on great experiences. And so a lot more experience engineering coming up with something that is tailored to the needs of people who want to get something exciting. And it could be anything more degustation menus because I think now, and obviously you've got to check your local demographic. Find out how many people there are. And I've seen this in areas where there's not a lot of people with that kind of money to spend, people running degustation menus, which I've thought have been amazing, super good value for amazing level of quality, but just not enough people buying it. There will be a subset of the market that will be out there that will pay good money for good experiences. Flip side of that, there's going to be a lot more people looking for budget dining. And I think that fits in quite well. More of a move, we're going to see more restaurants moving from more of the fine casual, more of the fine QSR, as restaurant owners look for ways that they can dissect that budget market to create as much of an experience as possible, as much as a product that is going to win with the customers, whilst keeping the overall price down, because a lot of people aren't going to have the money to spend on what would have been a traditional night out with the family a couple of years ago. The next thing, reflecting on all of the horror that people have had, for those people who've had really tough 18 months of COVID, one food that I think, and there's a few people out there who are saying this, comfort food. We want to be able to go out and just forget about COVID, forget about masks, forget about the case numbers, forget about what the RF is, forget about how many people died, forget about being locked up for so long. We just want to go back to a time when we were happy, when we were kids. So what are the comfort foods that you can be putting on your menu and getting out there, putting it on the socials so that people can say, you know what, that's what I want to do. That's what my grandmother used to cook for me, and I'm going to go out and we're going to take the family out there, and it's going to be, because taste is such an important part of people's psychological makeup. Remember, we're hardwired to eat every day because if we don't eat, we die. And the brain has got all of these amazing tricks in there that it does to remind people, hey, you got to eat. Hey, you got to eat. And it's not just that feeling of hunger. It's the sensation, the smell of eating, the feeling that that creates, the memories that it triggers. And remember, the meaning of restaurant, to restore the soul. Is now not the time, more than almost any other time in the last 100 years, that there are going to be people out there who are going to want their soul restored. Now, I don't know what kind of restaurant that you run. Is it a place where people are going to bring all of their friends and they can just have some happy time? They can have a few laughs, have a few beers, a glass of red with the meal, and they can talk, they can reminisce, they can decompress from all of the horrors from the last 18 months. Is it a place where the family can go out together and just enjoy some family time? They can talk, they can sit down, they're outside of the house. Hopefully the kids don't have their damn phones at the table. They can have some good conversations, take a few photos, create some good memories. And once again, move on, decompress, reflect on the time that's been, and talk about what the plans are going to be for the future. Is that the kind of restaurant that you offer? How do you package that up? Comfort food's going to be a good way of doing that. How do you get the message out and drive people to come in for those experiences? Lastly, one thing that we're starting to see is a lot of people are putting up a personal story. So, you know, someone in their family was impacted by COVID, or someone ended up in ICU. And as a thank you to the healthcare staff, they're offering a discount on a certain night. Now, obviously, drive people into the quiet night. So your Tuesday night, if you're open on Tuesday, you probably are because you won't be open on a Sunday. Creating that offer can be really powerful, particularly if you're in an area where there's a hospital. Hospitals are huge employers. They really do punch above their weight. There's a lot of nurses, a lot of doctors, a lot of ancillary staff. All of those people have been putting in. All of those people have had very, very stressful COVIDs. They're going to be looking to restore their soul. They're going to be looking for that family time or time out with colleagues from work. What is the opportunity? What's the offer that you need to do? Is it a free glass of wine? Is it some percentage off? Coming up with that story and making it personal. You know, what was it that the hospital did for someone in your team? What is it that they've done for the local community? How many COVID cases have they treated? All of those things, putting that all together can be a really powerful way of packaging up that message and creating something that's not only sustainable for you, but also giving back to the community, giving back to those workers who've made a big difference in the fight against COVID. All of those things that we've talked about, they need to be wrapped up around a coherent marketing strategy, because there's no point in bringing together all of the elements that are required to create an amazing family experience for your customers when no one knows about it. Remember, you don't want to be the best restaurant that no one's ever heard about. You don't want to have the best response to all of the challenges in 2022 if no one's heard about it. When we think about hiring, you don't want to be using job boards to be trying to hire. I would be using Facebook. I would be putting, or any other social media, put the offering that you've got out there. If you've created a mission-based restaurant, that should be on your social media, targeting people to work in your restaurant, because I think this is going to be a key competitive advantage in 2022. Now, let's assume that there are no more lockdowns. If there are no more lockdowns, it's still going to be a really tough year because of inflationary pressure, because of labor pressure, and because of the inability for a lot of customers to be able to pay what they were paying for last year. So a lot of restaurants are going to have to go through a big rethink of their value proposition, because they might be left in a place where their product is unaffordable by the mass market in their local area. that's going to create a big problem. If you do have a product that is in demand by the people in your community, that's fantastic, but you're going to need the staff to be able to service them. And so making sure that your value proposition to new employees is really out there so that whether it's word of mouth, social media, one thing, you could be going out to the local training institutions that are training front of house staff. In Australia, we have TAFEs, technical and further education places, and they'll train a lot of hospitality staff. Are you linking in with them? Are you creating a unique opportunity for people to get their first job in hospitality? That's a really cool way that you can increase the number of people who are working in your restaurant. So my quick checklist of things to do, have a think about your business plan. You know, there's a lot of people who literally have decided they don't want to run restaurants anymore because they're done. And that is probably fair enough. And it's important to be honest with yourself, because if you're done, if you don't want to be in a restaurant anymore, it's going to be really tough to build a team that's passionate about your restaurant when you're not. What are your personal goals? Where do you want to be in 5, 10, 20 years? How do you want to retire? Do you have a business plan that's going to support that? You've got to be thinking about the delivery costs, the labor costs, the price for the food inputs into your restaurant, then the money that you're going to get for each and every one of those products. So you've got to be making sure that you are categorizing each and every one of the dishes on your menu and making sure that the labor cost, the food cost, and the time cost all make sense for the numbers that you're selling and the amount that you get paid for each and every one of those dishes. If you're not, you're probably going to go out of business because you're not going to be able to afford the money to be able to pay the wages for that scarce labor. You're not going to be able to afford the marketing budget. And we're seeing, this is one of the things that we're seeing a big difference in. The bigger restaurants are really doubling down on marketing because they know that it's a tight market and they're very specific about who they want in the restaurant and they're targeting them. They focus like a laser on their ideal customer and they are marketing relentlessly to them. And some of them are being really successful with it. So the key thing is be flexible, be resilient. We've learnt that. We've had the masterclass in that over the last year and a half. I'm really keen to hear from people about what the challenges are that they're seeing in their country, in their local area, and how they're responding from it. So hopefully you've got something out of these episodes. If you did, please share it. If it pops up on your social media, or just tell other restaurant owners about Secret Sauce. We've been light on for episodes this year because we've been super busy with a whole range of things. I'm very keen to really pump up the number of episodes next year just because of the fact that, we get emails all the time from people around the world saying, I listened to this episode, I've put it in practice, and it's made a difference in my business. I love getting those emails. It sort of drives me on because not everyone can afford a marketing expert. And for those who can't, then, there's the podcast, which I think is a really powerful tool. Please share it. Please introduce someone else to it. If you need help with your marketing, feel free to reach out to the team. We're here to help. Hopefully, next year is going to be significantly different to this year and last year, and we are going to be able to focus on some more tangible issues, more things that are within our control: labor costs, labor availability, food costs, and finding something that resonates with a population that has been through a really rough couple of years. And I think this is the big opportunity for everyone in the restaurant industry to focus on how we're going to help restore everyone's souls. It's a big mission. There's lots of restaurants out there. And I know we're going to make a big difference in 2022. That's it. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all of those things. Looking forward to a really exciting and dynamic and hopefully a lot more profitable 2022. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.